take that back. And I want to apologize if I was kind of bossy. But you all helped and you did a beautiful job. Thank you so very much. And thank you, Corky, for making the beans and the rice and the wonderful main dish that we have today. And thank you, Kim, for bringing all the makings for ham and cheese sandwiches that we have back there. And for the chips. And Glory, where did we get the salad? Where did we get the salad? Do you know? Yeah, we got a brand new salad there.
From Friday.
Is it? It's crisp and green and miracles, you know. It's wonderful. And speaking of a miracle, we have been gifted with a wonderful guest over the last week, and this is a woman that many of you know, but you have been missing, and that's our Reverend Glory McCray. And Glory is going to be our speaker this morning, and I want you to know that she's not only traveled all the way to Texas, but she has been doing a lot of work on herself and who she is and where she's going, plus taking care of her son, who was diagnosed with leukemia, and that's why she left, was to go back to Texas to be with her son. We are so lucky, and I see her walking around back there, and she looks like a beautiful butterfly. So please welcome Reverend Glory.
Hey, hey, woohoo!
It's springtime, it's time for transformation. So today I'm going to be talking about 5 T's and 5 T's. So good morning, darlings. Would you call for a spot of tea? I've been practicing that one all morning. That's as good as it's going to get. So I am going to pass a little handout, and you can take one if you like, if you kind of follow along. Tea has been a part of my transformation in my health with doing a lot of diet and lifestyle changes. And so I did incorporate some teas. A few of these are listed here. And I'll tell you a little bit about how we came to this title. I have a very, very dear friend in Texas, down on Tiki Island. Her name is Janie, and I get to visit her home. She has a most beautiful, let's pass those around for her. She has a most beautiful butterfly garden on her property around her pool. And so when I came upon the decision of talking,
Gloria, I didn't get any.
didn't get any?
No.
Okay, then if anybody has some extras, pass it around. And if anybody's close, you can just kind of view with each other. Not right now. Because we'll pass them around, and if you want to keep them, then keep them. If you don't, then you share it with someone else. Okay? Because I don't want to just waste a bunch of paper and have them laying all over the place. So basically, I'm sitting on one of her decks at her home, and I'm having a cup of tea. Now, Janie had 5 different teas in her pantry. And I'm going to give you the definition of pantry right quick. A small storage space or closet where you store food, utensils, or tools, okay, for preparation, okay? Now, she had 5 teas. 3 of them I had brought into her home myself because I do some health and wellness with her. And so I had put those in her. She was going through some illnesses. And but in her thing, she had a big box of oolong tea. And so when I'm sitting on the porch, the deck, looking at the butterflies in the butterfly garden, I'm reflecting upon my friends here in California because I had spent a delightful evening with Clyde, and he told me so much about teas. And he orders tea specially from India. And I was here studying Ayurveda, so anything India was quite, interesting for me. And he told me about how they're hand-picked and all these things. And so I decided that I wanted to talk about maybe tea. And since there were 5 of them in the pantry in the house, I thought I would pick 5, or 5 that were related to what I was doing. And then as I was meditating about what I might say, 5 other T's came up. Time, travel, transition, thoughts, and transformation. And I'm thinking, how am I going to tie all that together with tea? But I submitted the topic to Dottie, who immediately emailed me, and I could just hear her say, "Now, Glory, what is this about? Is tea spiritual? This sounds like a cooking show." And so then I really had to do some meditating. And so I wrote back and I said, yes, actually tea is spiritual. And so I do have some notes here I'm going to try to follow because just to give you the ideas. So teas offer the energy of chi. If anybody familiar with chi?
Yes.
Yes, yay, awesome. Okay. And the Tibetan monks and the Buddhist monks, as well as the Southern Indian people, use teas in their ceremonies and in their esoteric practices. Okay, Taoist monks in China actually planted teas according to certain star constellations because they felt that the star constellation energy was connected to the tea. How about that? I found out wonderful things. And then, of course, I go to Ayurveda, which Ayurveda uses tea to balance the doshas, like Vata, Pitta, Kapha. You've been here with Laura Marshall. I know you know Vata, Pitta, Kapha, okay? Those are our 3 constitutional dominations, okay? Ayurveda also uses tea to balance the pH, help with the pH balance in the body, and to stimulate the lymphatic system. So our lymphatic system is the first offender in our immune system. Okay, so tea has a place for spirit, mind, and body. Okay, so I'm going to move on and we're going to talk about time, travel, thought, transition, and transformation. Now, on your paper, you might notice when I'm going along that I'll remark about some of these T's. And the first one we're going to talk about is time. But first of all, I'm going to do my little disclaimer. All of you know I'm from Texas, so I'm going to say y'all sometimes, or that sort of a thing. And I'm also upon the foundation of Christians. So you're going to get some scripture. And one of them that it's really, really heavy for me today was in the book of Hosea. And so I'm going to give you that too. So bear with me just a moment as I stand in the presence of the most amazing grace. And may I deliver in word and deed that which would be for the highest benefit for spirit, mind, and body to this congregation, that we may be uplifted and inspired. And so let it be. So we're going to start with scripture. In the book of Hosea, and this one was dynamite. Oh boy. Hear the word of the Lord, O Israelites. And this applies to us today, folks. You'll see it as I read. Because the Lord has a charge to bring against you who live in the land. For there is no faithfulness, no love, no acknowledgement of God in the land. There's only cursing and lying and murder, stealing and adultery, and you're breaking all the bounds. Bloodshed follows bloodshed. And because of this, the land dries up, and all who live in it waste away. The beasts of the fields, the birds in the sky, and the fish in the sea are swept away. Stop bringing charges against one another. This only causes you to stumble day and night, and even your leaders stumble with you. This is to your destruction. My people perish for lack of knowledge. And because you have rejected knowledge, Because you've rejected knowledge, your intimate knowledge of the love that is your true nature, I also reject you as my priest, those who are called to go forth and inspire and teach the Word of God. Because you ignore the law of love, and the result is going to be that love will ignore your children. Those are pretty solemn words, and they were written way back when, okay? But can you see where they apply to where we are today? So what knowledge is it that we're rejecting? A lot of people would call it pure common sense with some things. But we're going to take this journey with the other 5 T's. So then I flip over to the New Testament, and I think, okay, how do we not reject knowledge? What knowledge do we need to focus upon? And so over in Romans 12, 1-2, it's one of my favorite scriptures, it says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you offer your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, that you might prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Health, well-being, abundance, prosperity are all elements, aspects of the perfection of what we're offering our living bodies as a sacrifice to. So here's some knowledge that we need to begin working on. And I began working with that when I came into a health crisis on my own. So we can see the times they are changing. Talking about time T. You'll notice time T is on your list, probably quite down toward the bottom. And for some of us who are a little older than some of us, we can remember a time where, we had time and we respected time. And time was a little bit maybe simpler than it seems to be today. So now, let's look at time T. Time T was used in history for embalming.
What?
Yes. And to protect from Black Death.
You mean time like TikTok or time like THYME?
THYME. This is why it's tying in with time. Okay? I was working it.
Okay. Just checking.
So time T was used for embalming. Now that's a process of preserving a dead body.
Yeah.
Okay? Something that the life is out of. But it was also used to protect from the Black Plague, which was killing people, okay, during a period of time. Okay? Yeah, I got that one in. Okay. But there was a simpler time in life when we had time to contemplate and to reflect and to take time to meditate and to pray and things like this. And so what is the first thing that we do when we're faced with a health crisis? Well, some of us call the doctor. But on your own, when something hits you in the middle of the night, your first inclination might be to get in contact with Spirit and say, okay, what's going on here with the body? Do I need to get some help? How can I help myself? Okay? So you go into kind of prayer and meditation. Okay? Time. Okay, so when we get into that place where we need some medical attention or we need some help, and we're taking the time, okay, because this was a big part of my health issue. After the onset of my sister passed with cancer, and my son was diagnosed with leukemia, so a lot of trauma going on during this time, which threw me into a health crisis area and put me into transition. So we're going to move right out of time and go over to transition. Now, in the process of transition, we probably discovered that we're going to and fro, 90 miles to nothing. We're doing, and this is what I was doing, okay? I was taking care of everybody else. I was taking care of my son. I dropped everything and big transition, travel. I left so quickly that I called back a few days later and couldn't find my keys anywhere. And Daddy said, "Oh, John found them. You left them in the door." That's how fast I got out of here, okay? Because I had looked at the lab results and really I sent them over to my other son who's a paramedic, and I said, "Get to your brother and make sure he gets to the hospital." And he's looking at them. He goes, "Are we looking at leukemia?" I says, "I'm not saying that word and I need a plane ticket." And he goes, "When?" I says, "As soon as I can get out of here. I'm already looking on the computer. What's the credit card number?" And he gave it to me. I booked it like right then. That's how fast I was getting out of here. Because I had worked at MD Anderson Cancer Center with acute lymphoblastic leukemia on the research team. I knew what this meant. And so I got to him rather quickly. Now, meanwhile, my sister was also going through cancer of the stomach, and we actually lost her in July. And so I'm taking care of my son, and I've moved, I've dropped everything. And about October, I fell into a health crisis, and I felt bad enough that I put on my clothes and I says, "Okay, you guys, I'm not feeling well, get me to an emergency room." Marvis, my son, had just come through chemo, and his eyes were still sensitive to light and things like this. I drove myself, which he lives close to a hospital. And we got there, and they started testing me for all kinds of things. Well, we determined that I had a DVT, which is a deep vein thrombosis, a clot in my leg, and multiple pulmonary embolisms. And that's blood clots in your lungs because it's broken off in your. So now I'm also a practicing diet and lifestyle counselor with Ayurveda, and I don't like to take synthetic medicines. And so they got me hooked up to the heparin right quick to get the blood thinning and get things moving. And then about the night they got me into a room, the doctor sent around some medicine for high blood pressure. And I says, "I don't have high blood pressure." He says, "Well, your blood pressure was up when you came in." And so I says, "Look at that chart and see what happened." So they said, "Well, it did come back down to like 110/7." I said, "And that's my normal, so I'm not taking blood pressure medicine." He says, "Well, he probably wants you to have it as a prophylactic." I says, "Then when he brings me my lab results and we can discuss this, then I'll consider taking the blood pressure medicine." Well, another nurse comes in a little bit later on, and this doctor is sending me cholesterol medicine. And it's Lipitor. I blame Lipitor for my mother's death. I promise you. And I says, "I don't take Lipitor. They'll have to discuss that with me with my lab results." And so then the next time they wanted me to take something else. And when she came in, she says, "I'm sorry, you're probably not going to want this." I said, "Exactly." And she says, "Well, you complained of a headache, and so the doctor has prescribed that you could have some Tylenol." I says, "No, thank you." And she says, "Could we get anything for you?" And I says, "Could I have a little tea, please?" And she says, "I'll see what I can do about that." And I says, "Matter of fact, if you could just bring me a cup of hot water. I always have a bag of tea in my purse, okay?" And I think I know the tea that I had was chamomile. And so she brought me the hot water. I drank my chamomile tea, and I went to sleep without any more headache. The doctor comes in the next morning and says, "How can I help you if you're turning everything down? I've sent you medicine. You're diabetic, you got DVTs, pulmonary embolisms, your cholesterol's off the chart, you've got atherosclerosis. How can I help you?" And I says, "You probably can't, but if you work with me, I can help you help me." And he goes, "What do you mean? I'm the doctor." I says, "Yeah, but I know my body. I've been in it for 62 years now." I says, "And I prefer natural medications." So he didn't like my conversation too much, and he kind of stormed out the room. So, one down. Anyway, Another doctor comes in close, yes, close to my dismissal, and she says, well, the doctor wants to prescribe these for you, metformin for the diabetes and this and that. So it was pretty close to me being dismissed, and Carlos was there, my son who's a paramedic, and I says, go down there and have them print off my labs. And so when he came back, my hemoglobin A1C was 6.5. My cholesterol was pretty much off the charts. It was totally imbalanced, but I understand that's an inflammatory process as well as diabetes. The high blood pressure had gone back down to normal, so I wasn't going to take that at all. And acetaminophen would damage my liver, and I'm already in an inflammatory process, so I wasn't doing that. And so I says, you can give me the prescriptions and I will follow up with a practitioner. I says, but what I'm going to do is I'm not taking any of this medication. If I cannot significantly change these values in the period of 3 months with what I know to do, I will consider taking your medicine and be more cooperative. She says, okay, fine, we're just going to give you the prescriptions. You can do what you want. I says, okay, thanks. When I left the hospital, and I didn't eat anything in the hospital because they brought me Jell-O that had artificial sweetener in it. They brought me applesauce that had other stuff in it. And I said, okay, they said, what do you want for they always call for a menu. Can you just give me a banana? I didn't figure they could get anything in the banana and I could survive. So when I got home, I went on a regimen of fasting 1 day a week with water only, followed by 6 days of juicing. I juiced carrots, apples, celery, green juice, things like that, and then did that for 2 weeks, and then I incorporated juicing and raw foods, okay? And that made a significant change in my health. Now, I wound up back at the hospital 3 months later, and I guess the reason I was there 3 months later was because that is what I proposed, that I would, get the values, and that's when you do a hemoglobin A1C again. So they did a whole workup. My hemoglobin A1C was 5.6 instead of 6.5. My ratio was 1:8 in the cholesterol profile, the lipid profile. Meant I was 1:8 for high risk of, coronary disorders and strokes and stuff like that. Well, it was down to 1:2, okay? And my blood pressure was fine. So I significantly decreased my values, okay? And so this was part of my transition to get me into the transformation, okay? But let's look at transition for some of us who are going through a lot of things now. They may not have us in the hospital or anything like that, but trauma, stress, all bring up an inflammatory process in the body. Okay? And teas played a big part of that because when I didn't want to just drink water, I could always have some warm tea. And when you're on blood thinners, I did take the blood thinners for a little while, you get cold. And so I want something warm to drink. And so here comes the holy basil, the tulsi tea. Now that's very important in Ayurveda and in India because the basil plant is just practically revered. Okay, for its medicinal and its spiritual processes, okay? And so most of the time in the morning I would have that. It helped with my prayer and meditation time. It really, really did. The holy basil tea is an adaptogenic, which means it kind of gives your body what it needs when it needs it. So if you're depressed, it works on, as an antidepressant. If you're anxious, it calms you down, kind of like a anti-anxiety drug. As a matter of fact, in some cultures, they would use that tea instead of what we have as synthetic transitory things. Okay, so let's move on through transition. I do want to read you a little bit of this. Transition leads us into, on this journey, transformation. And when I started looking at that part, there's another scripture for you. The Bible says in James, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds." So this is what we face in transition. Transition makes us grow one way or the other. We either throw up both hands and quit, or we decide how we're going to fight, okay, how we're going to play this game, what part we're going to play in it, and you know, where we're going to go, how we're going to do it. So, whenever you face many trials and tribulations, because you know that the testing of your faith, remember, faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word. The testing of your faith produces perseverance or patience. And it says, "Let patience have her perfect work in you, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." So transition doesn't go, boom, you plant the seed and you got a harvest. No. Transition brings you through all this stuff, okay? And then it says, "If any of you lack wisdom, ask of God, who gives to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given unto him. But let him ask in faith." Let him ask believing, first of all, that God hears you, hears your prayers. "Nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like the wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Let not that man think that he will receive anything of God. For a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." So if you're wondering how you're going to get through this transitory period in your life, whether it's a change of jobs, a change of size of clothes you wear, a change of anything, where you live in, there was a time when people worked the same job for 26, 25, 30 years and then retired from that job. They put all their children through one school, you know, kind of a deal. Everything was a lot simpler, okay? Lived in the same house, all these kinds of things. But nowadays, times are changing. We're bouncing from this job to that job, this mate to that mate, this size to that size, this income to that income, and it's kind of crazy. Okay, we find ourselves in the craziness. Well, what we have to do is become focused, and that brings up our thoughts. What are you thinking about this game you're playing? What are you thinking about your transition, the transitory period that you're in? How are you going to overcome this? So you need a plan. You need a focus. You need the thoughts to be on point. So what's in your pantry? Remember that little storage space that I told you where you put food and utensils and tools? What are you thinking about? Well, here comes oolong tea. Oolong tea is good for blood sugar control. So I think that's how I got my hemoglobin A1C to change a little bit. It supports metabolism and gives us brain function and mental clarity. Okay, so there's another tea for us.
I grew up drinking oolong tea.
Okay, that was the one that Clyde introduced me to and was telling me about it. He gets it imported from India, and he was telling me that they hand pick it and all this kind of stuff. Do you know the energy that goes from our hands into handling things, even especially our food? And I'm just one on that. Okay, in Ayurveda, we have the 5 elements in our hands. It's called the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 great elements. Ether, which is our consciousness. Fire, the sunshine. Water, the ocean, the rain. Earth, okay, Mother Earth, who gives us all the sustenance that we need. Okay, and air. Air is kind of like our thoughts. They come and go. Blow stuff around. Changes stuff all the time. It all falls into line. And so now I want to touch a little bit on traffic. Because sometimes in our transitory position, we get stuck. Okay, anybody travel 101 when we're, that time of day? So I'm telling you, honey, it happens. don't get it twisted, S-I-T, sit happens. And sit happens because a lot of times we're sitting on our jobs in front of the computer. We're not moving around so much. Okay, and so that's where travel gets into it, because I changed my life, transformed my life with diet and lifestyle changes. And part of that lifestyle change was doing yoga in the mornings when I couldn't get outside, and doing cardio on the stairwell that's outside, when I could get out, and getting the heart pumping and moving. Okay, I have another thing that's called SOS. Some of you know it differently, but I call it stuck on stupid. Okay? You can get stuck on stupid by not following the natural flows of energy, the natural laws of health and well-being. Okay? You can consume this pill and that pill and this pill, and I decided I don't want a bag of pills. I don't want a bag of chemicals going in my body, and I don't know how it's going to process and all these kinds of things. So I decided not to be stuck on stupid. I would be on that computer in my Ayurveda books. There was times I was sitting in the floor and my son would come and look at me and goes, "What are you doing?" Because I'd have books all around me. And I'm taking notes, and I'm looking up this, and I'm looking up that. I'm trying to find out why I had this happen, why this happened to me, why this happened to me, okay? And so when I got back with another doctor, I says, okay, I understand some things. Here's all my results from both my hospital visits, and this is why I'm seeing you. I says, and I think I've come across the whys. I found a doctor who will listen to me. And he gave me vitamin D3 and vitamin B12. That's basically all I needed, was a little help. But I wanted to know why I wasn't getting the vitamin B12. I was eating healthy when I started back eating. And so then I determined, okay. So next time I saw him, I says, so it seems like I have an inflammatory process probably caused by something that's called leaky gut. Are you familiar with that? And he says, yes. I says, do you think I'm right? And he goes, what do you think? I says, I think I'm right because I made some changes and I'm feeling different. And he goes, okay. And I says, and I also read that the colon will change this and colon, and he listens to me. And he says, okay, how can I help you? I says, tell me if I'm doing okay. And he goes, I think you're doing very well. Okay, so now before I left Texas, I took a whole plethora of tests because he says, well, we can get these tests for you, and I wanted to know if I still have the blood clot in my leg and how I'm doing with my healthy transformation process. And so we ordered a whole bunch of tests, and he says, well, we'll get these results in about a week. We're looking at the if there's any blockage in my carotid arteries, because there was calcium deposits in my arteries that caused the assumption of atherosclerosis. However, with an inflammatory process, calcium and other nutrients go into places that they don't really supposed to go, okay? And so when I explained what I had learned about that from him, and I says, I want to incorporate this vitamin K2. And he says, I think that's a good idea. And I says, how much should I take? And so he gave me an approximation. And so I started incorporating that. And so we did all these tests, and I don't have blockage in the carotids, okay? And there is, we did some x-rays. There's no longer any pulmonary embolisms. And we did some Doppler things, and so all the blood is flowing where it's supposed to. I got off the Xarelto, the blood thinner, and I says, so what about this Xarelto? Because I'm not sure about, he says, well, why don't you take it for about 6 months? I had been on it 3 months, and I says, I quit last week. And he goes, okay. I says, but I quit gradually, and I'm using blood thinners, as I'm using natural blood thinners, cayenne pepper, garlic, lemon water, and tea. Okay? So, yeah, and turmeric. I was using all natural processes for my transformation. And it has worked for me. This is really kind of left what I thought I was going to be saying. But I needed to share that for you. So now I'm going to go a little bit in a different direction with and that's all I need. So we want to talk just a little bit about the butterflies in my friend's garden. The butterfly lays their eggs on a leaf of the plant that's complementary to the type of butterfly it is. And one of the reasons it does that is because when the larva comes out of that little tiny egg, it's really, really small. And so it can't go foraging around and finding food. And so the egg is laid and he's hatched and he eats the leaf of the plant that he was hatched on. And so food is readily available for him. Mother Nature provides for us in the most natural ways for our transformation. And then when that little caterpillar starts going through its transitory travels, okay, all he does is eat. I went through that. I went through that while I was here. I consumed so much love and teaching and knowledge and adoration and the liberty to be whatever kind of butterfly I was going to be while I was here to reach my transformation, okay? And then the butterfly does something really, really unique. It goes into a chrysalis. And that chrysalis is your prayer and meditation time. When you're alone with God, when you're alone with that spirit of the Creator. And many of us are in that part of the transition right now where you just need to be in the presence of the most amazing grace at any time that you can get there. Anytime something is hurting you, you can just wrap yourself in that powerful love of God. Okay? Know that it is there. And that when you pray, God hears you and comforts you, wraps you up in the chrysalis, protects you from the cold, hard winds of change that are going on in your life. Now, in a little bit, the butterfly sheds the chrysalis and his wings are kind of wet, hanging behind him. But I'm told that in about 3 to 4 hours, he masters flight. Okay? 3 to 4 hours of meditation, you're in a whole nother place in your life. What are your thoughts? What's in your pantry? Do you have the faith enough to believe that God hears your prayers, that there is a loving being, power that's higher and mightier than you, that cares for you and loves you? When you can believe that, if you ever get a chance to have 3 hours in meditation, wrapped in the love of God, wrapped in the energy of pure love, this is what you'll have. Pure transformation. May you all learn how to fly. And by the way, I'm told that monarchs travel according to the weather conditions. They like Mexico and California. And they like spring and the fall. So I'll see you in the fall, y'all.